This is episode number 20 for Prophecy for the Last Hour, preparing for a paradigm shift. So this week I'm going to pick up on a topic I had started last week, and we're going to, and again, I'm going to try really hard to start slow and be calm and no rabbit trails tonight. That is my absolute goal, so we'll see. But I'm going to start out in the book of Jude. Jude is like this packed one page in the Bible. Okay, that's its whole book, one page. And it is so packed. Good things do come in small packages. But we started out in Jude, verse 7, and I'm going to start up again in verse 6. And I was saying how Jude, who is the brother, a half-brother of Jesus, a brother of James the Just, wrote this little treatise here. What he said in verse 7, he said, in a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns that gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. And I've tried to unpack that. That verse has so much information in it on the early history of mankind. It is my premise. I've said this I have 20 videos now, so this is going, and in all of them, I've pretty much stated my perception that just as Paul said, that there are men who literally suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Much truth has been deliberately withheld from us. And we live in a time today when the restoration of all things is coming to pass, where every hidden thing is coming out. So a lot of the ancient history that the ancients lived through, which really has not been accurately carried forward to us in this last generation, is now busting open because things are being restored to us. This is one of the key reasons, because there's a verse that says that the enemy, Satan, will be able to deceive the whole world. Now that's a pretty large statement, to deceive the whole world, not a people group, not a nation, a whole world. So how would you be able to do that unless you had you were able to whittle information down or some very strategic things that you were able to do to keep people from having a true knowledge and understanding of the truth. So Sodom and Gomorrah is something that's just sort of now like a little Sunday school story. Most people don't really get the implication of it. Now we're going to unpack Genesis, or the verse 6, the one above that, and he says, and the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their own home, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Both of these are saved for judgment on the great day. If you took nothing from last week, the whole point is Sodom and Gomorrah was a town that was the cities of the plain during the time of Abraham and Lot. They had become completely corrupted. They were very wicked and perverse people, and there's much testimony. I should have given you a little more examples of wickedness and evil and perversion. But they also had gone after and had become a group of people of mixed and mingled seed, of going after strange flesh. And that's word strange literally means there's no fudging, because there's two words you could use for it. And this is the word the prophet used. It means another kind. Flesh of another kind. Not flesh of the same kind, but flesh of another kind. And it implies outside of, it's not really a homosexual reference in its truth, in the absolute unpacking of the whole thing. It's even more insidious. So anyways, here we are in Genesis, Jude 6, which refers to another very oblique verse or chapter in the Bible, Genesis 6:2. So let's go there now, starting in Genesis 1. I'm going to build my case from 4 texts. I got something for everyone. We're going to start with the Bible. We're going to start with the 66th book of the Bible canon, okay? We're going to go to the book of Jasher, a book that has been restored to the last day saints. We're going to also go to the book of Enoch, another book that has been restored, and then we're going to end up in the Wisdom of Solomon, which is a deuterocanonical book. It is in Catholic, Ethiopian, and Orthodox canons. And I've been through all of this in earlier sessions. I have a YouTube that I think people should really watch that is called Not All Canons Are Created Equal. That's a lot of information about this. So, but let's just start and read this little story in Genesis 6. There has been huge debate on this throughout time, and there's a very good reason for it. But in this day and in this age, with the knowledge that's come back to people, and with it being, as it references, Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. And the point is, we are in the days of the second coming of the Son of Man. So whatever was going on in Noah's day is going on again. So it says here that when men began to increase, and again I'm in Genesis chapter 6 verse 1. When men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, and that's a key term, and I'm just going to read it before I explain it. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with men forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. Verse 4, then the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. The Lord saw how great man's wickedness on the earth had become, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil all the time. The Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with pain. So the Lord said, I will wipe mankind, whom I have created, from the face of the earth, men and animals, creatures that move along the ground, birds of the air, for I am grieved that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then it goes into the account. This is the account of Noah. Now, this is so packed, but this is all we get. This is the reason for the flood. This is the reason that God, the Yahweh Elohim, the Most High God, was angry with his creation because they'd done something, and he was wiping them out with a flood. Now that sounds pretty harsh and pretty bizarre, actually. But what was going on? And how can you take, this is like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs in our Bible with a little bit forwarding, going over up to chapter 8, a little bit in 7 and 8. And it's just not enough information, in my opinion, to make a really case for what was going on. And that is why in the rest of the text, and this is one of the main reasons why this understanding of what's really going on here is coming back to us, because people are now being able, because it's coming back to us from books from the Dead Sea Scroll, from the last 120 years, there have been texts that have been found that the early church had that are coming back to us. I've said this many times. They're finding them in all these archaeological digs. There is works that even deuterocanonical works that 90% of the people never read. I mean, I love my friends. I have a lot of Catholic friends. I have a lot of family Catholic in my family. But to this day, I yet to actually have a conversation with anyone. Actually, I have yet to have a conversation with anyone, period, on Sirach or Ezra or Wisdom, which are all 3 books that are in the deuterocanonical canon and are hugely informational about all of this stuff. So it isn't that so you can't really say it's our fault that we don't know this. It's because basically we have chosen to be ignorant and not to really study our own works, okay? Anyway, so now let me just let me give you some information on the Book of Jasher. Now, and this is another thing that I have stated time and time again, which I really believe, which the more research I do continues to be confirmed to me. A lot of understanding, you have to understand what apocryphal is, what the apocrypha, what it is, the pseudographica, these are all words that get thrown around, and if you don't really kind of understand what these things are. But in the Book of Jasher, it is, well, this is, okay, so there's esoteric knowledge. This is something that, you just really need to wrap your mind around. I didn't make any of this stuff up, people. I'm telling you. I'm just reporting. I'm just the court reporter, just telling you what's out there, what happened. Esoteric knowledge, by definition, is knowledge that is really held in a very small group of people, okay? Both sides. We're in a war. I believe the Bible text. It's a war between the sons of darkness, the princes of the power of the air, the rulers, the principalities and powers, the spiritual wickedness that have been running the show, and the seed of the righteous, okay? It's a war. And both sides have had some knowledge that they've kind of really kept close to the close and hasn't really been made public, okay? Now that's God's design. That's just the way it's played out. But now a lot of it's coming out. More and more people are beginning to understand, oh my gosh, in ways that I hope it scares the devil, exactly what's been going on under the radar, exactly who he is, what he does, who his little groups are, his practices, how does he maintain control? Okay, so this is really beginning. There are people, you can really go online, you can begin to get this picture, and I'll tell you what, it's pretty amazing, and it completely confirms all the biblical texts. Also, the Jews had the scribes. There's a class. See, we don't really understand. The scribes were a class of priests, and it was their job by Yahweh. And the history of this thing started with Adam. It went through Enoch. It went through Abraham. And by the time it got to Moses, and it kind of got totally, in the negative sense, ritualized and traditionalized. But in the better case, it really got locked down. You couldn't get rid of this information anymore. Okay, but there's parts of it that this was the apocrypha. There was understandings that were to be kept forward for the last days generation when all things would be revealed. So the Book of Jasher, lo and behold, and I told you last week that I met a gentleman that I went to a conference on the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish works of mysticism. Okay, a lot of their hidden understandings. The people have problems with this stuff. Okay, but this work was all oral for centuries and centuries and centuries, but it was kept, and I believe now too, I do believe that there were hidden texts, okay? So this came out in around the 13th century. A gentleman started to really publish it out, and then by the time of the printing press, it really came out, and a lot of works have been published and put out there that were more or less really kept in a tight little enclave. This is why Paul, as I said last week, could say that he really did. They have kept the covenant, some of the things that the house of Judah had really done through the centuries. Anyways, the Book of Jasher, I believe, was a book that had been kept alive in portions and ways and stuff, and it is referenced in the Bible. It is a real book. It has a history. It was read in the book of, it's called the Book of Jasher, which means the book of the upright. Jasher is not the name of a person. It means Jasher, it's the just. So it's the book of the just, the book of the upright, which we are. I mean, the righteous seed is called the upright, those of righteousness, okay? 2 Samuel 1:18, it's quoted. It's quoted, and a lot of people think it could have been compiled during the time of David, which really could kind of make sense, because they were really locking down their history. And this was a season of really getting the books and getting the storyline straight and really kind of locking down. And then the temple gets built, and then now they have this huge storehouse. This talks about how there were chambers where they would keep scrolls, where the scribes were supposed to recopy them. They had a real central place. The library in Jerusalem became a huge library, okay, of all these texts through the centuries. It says here in 2 Samuel 1:18, to teach the sons of Judah the use of the bow, behold, it is written in the book of the upright, which is a reference to the book of Jasher. So what he's saying now, and this is where I say you have to look at words, you have to understand word usages because words change. Bow, it doesn't mean, it's not like talking about a bow and an arrow, it's not a military term. A bow is talking about, a bow is a way for a poetic lament or a tune. They would teach the people, see, and this is really, we do this today, you teach, a lot of times the old hymns, they're so loaded with doctrine, like great way to teach people is to sing it, because then it gets over in your head, you start playing it and you get it in you. That's a great way. The Irish are another example. Think of it, all their laments and their tunes that keep alive their history. Most people of the world do this today still. And David was the great psalmist. I mean, think of how David and his laments. Okay, so what it means is it's just sort of keeping the history alive in storytelling form and in lament and in song. Who would have known? So in the book of Jasher, also in Joshua, chapter 10, verse 13, and this is also quoted, and it says, "And the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves on their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jasher, in the book of the upright?" Because it said Jasher means just or upright. So here are two instances where it is quoted in our canonical book. So there was, but in a lot of ways, what I think it is really, David, it was sort of like, I've heard this, like a national epic. It's like they just, all their best stories, all their best information, it was all elaborated. It was kind of more like in story form. It was like the greatest novel to read, how you would really. So let's go to the book of Jasher, okay? And I told you this last week, that on Sodom and Gomorrah, we get like a couple of verses, but there's like 2 chapters. There's actually like a lead up of 4 to 5 chapters in Joshua that will paint the whole, give you the backdrop and the build up and the history of what's going on. So this just doesn't come out of nowhere, okay? So let's just start, because I want to build, what I want to read a little bit in Jasher is because I want to go to Enoch. Now Enoch, people, again, we get one verse in Jude about Enoch deliberately, in the sense of where he is quoted prophetic as a prophet by Jude, and it's in our canon. So you can't say Enoch's really not a prophet in the line of the pages, because he's quoted this way by one of our canonized books, Jude, the Lord's brother. But even more important is, and then you have a little bit in Genesis about Enoch, how he walked with God and was not. He was a righteous man, he walked with God, and he was not. Well, that sure tells you a lot. But Enoch was probably the most important figure in the pre-Diluvian world, bar none. I know Noah had a big part to play, but actually Enoch had a bigger role. And his legacy and his history, and he was a prolific writer. He wrote 365 books. The whole ancient world knew his storyline. Just let's start here, because there's so much information in Jasher about the lead up to the flood, what was going on, and about Enoch. So I'm starting in chapter 3 of the book of Jasher. "And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after having begot Methuselah, and he served the Lord and despised the evil ways of men." So that little phrase, Enoch walked with God, that little part did get lifted and put into our canon. Oh, okay. "And the soul of Enoch was wrapped up in the instruction of the Lord, in knowledge and in understanding, and he wisely retired from the sons of men and secreted himself from them for many days." And I just want to say, this is the beginner. This is where prophets, you got to spend time alone with the Lord. He is starting you just can't think that you're just going to sit there on a lotus pad and just kind of meditate, and God's going to download incredible. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to secret yourself away, study the text, talk to the Lord, develop a relationship, understanding the Holy Spirit and truth, and you got to be at his feet. That's the way it is. So anyways, here is Enoch. He's doing this. "And it was at the expiration of many years, while he was serving the Lord and praying before him in his house, that an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, and he said, 'Here am I.'" Totally not unfamiliar. Many prophets have a similar experience. "And he said, 'Rise, go forth from thy house and from the place where thou dost hide thyself, and appear to the sons of men.' in order that thou mayest teach them the way in which they should go, and the work which they must accomplish to enter in the ways of God. You know, I want to say something here really quick because I forgot this. Because when you listen to this, I want you to remember this verse. Because again, we get one verse. And this is actually a verse. This is Genesis 5, 26b. So it's even half a verse. It says, at that time men began to call, which is the word proclaim. I checked it out. It's the word proclaim on the name of the Lord. Okay? This is where, this is again talking about the patriarchs before the flood. So at that time, men began to call to proclaim the name of the Lord. We get that, and people wonder, what is that about? Well, let's see. We can get some information. So Enoch rose up, okay, and he was told by the angel that he was to assemble the sons of men and acquaint them with the instruction of the Lord. And he ordered it to be proclaimed in all places where the sons of men dwelt, saying, where is the man who wishes to know the ways of the Lord and good works? Let him come to Enoch. And all the sons of men then assembled to him. And for all who desired this thing went to Enoch, and Enoch reigned over the sons of men according to the word of the Lord. And they came and bowed to him, and they heard his word. And this is all out of respect. This wording is out of respect. Here's a sage, a great wise man. And the Spirit of God was upon Enoch. And the Spirit of God was upon Enoch. And he taught all his men the wisdom of God and his ways. And the sons of men served the Lord all the days of Enoch. And they came to hear his wisdom. And all the kings of the sons of men, both first and last, together with their princes and judges, came to Enoch when they heard of his wisdom. And they bowed down to him, and they also required of Enoch to reign over them, to which he consented. And they assembled in all 130 kings and princes, and they made Enoch king over them, and they were all under his power and command. And Enoch taught them wisdom, knowledge, and the ways of the Lord. Wisdom, knowledge, and I've always said you've got to have revelation knowledge and spiritual understanding. Sophia and Gnosis. It's throughout all the scriptures over and over and over, and the ways of the Lord. And he made peace amongst them, and peace was throughout the earth during the life of Enoch. That sounds like revival to me. I mean, it sounds like revival. And Enoch reigned over the sons of men 243 years, and he did justice and righteousness with all his people, and he led them in the ways of the Lord. And I'm going to skip when it says, and it was in the 56th year of the life of Lamech, when Adam died. 930 years old was he at his death. And his two sons, with Enoch and Methuselah his son, buried him with great pomp, as at the burial of kings, in the cave which God had told him, which is the cave of treasures, for those who are a little more well-read about all this. And in that place all the sons of men made a great mourning and weeping on account of Adam. It has therefore become a custom among the sons of men to this day. And Adam died because he ate of the tree of knowledge, and his children after him, as the Lord had spoken. Just to give you they all knew what happened. This was nothing new. It was not a secret. So let me tell you that I'm going to skip a few places here, and we're going to go and then into chapter 4, the beginning of chapter 4. And all the days that Enoch lived upon earth were 365 years. And Enoch was, now, there's another set of books out there which I recommend people reading, and it's called the Forgotten Books of Eden. There's like 4 books, and it's really just sort of the same. There's first and second. The first book, Adam and Eve, the second book of Adam and Eve, the Slavic book of Adam and Eve, because you have different translations. But there's all this literature that, again, is Jewish historical writings that flushes out much more and gives a lot more detail also of what was going on in the days of Noah. And let me just say, yes, I do believe Adam lived 930 years. I see nothing wrong about this. When you consider the highest as a son of God, created on the sixth day, God breathed into him the whole. Here are his genetics now. He has entered into a covenant with death, which is something I will flush out really soon. But here he is, the Lord said, in that day you eat, in that day you will die. And there's many other scriptural references. You put it together because Scripture interprets Scripture, that a day of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. And within 1,000 years, Adam died. And I see nothing wrong with that. The genetics of this guy must have been unbelievable. The genetics of all these people, pre-Diluvian, were unbelievable. And this helps to make a lot of sense when you put that together with what happened, and you get a race of giants. You get Nephilim on the earth in that day. And, if you don't believe me, I'll tell you what. Just a little side, my one rabbit trail, I promise. Go Google Nephilim. Google the bones, the stuff that they're discovering, which, it's just getting too great. They just are not going to be able to hide this much longer. Okay, these men that suppress the truth and unrighteousness, it's like water. It's just pushing against the dam, and pretty soon that dam is going to break. It's out there. People know it. It's absolutely documented. One guy, Steve Quayle, he spent his whole life. He is absolutely probably one of the most respected authorities on this. Go to his website, Steve Quayle, okay? If you don't want to hear it, you can see it, and it's pretty amazing. So then we go into what it was like, because that's the righteous seed. Enoch was ministering to those who wanted to walk in the ways of God, okay? How about those that didn't, okay? So one thing God did is he gave free will. So now let's move into the book of Enoch, but let me just end with Jasher in couple more verses. So then, the flip side, and all the sons of men departed from the ways of the Lord in those days as they multiplied upon the face of the earth with sons and daughters. And they taught one another their evil practices, and they continued sinning against the Lord. Let me say this, and the Bible does tell you this, that there are two kind of groups of people. There's the line of Cain, and there is the line of Seth. These are two people groups on the earth, and one, like Enoch, ministering to his own, righteous. They want to walk in the ways of the Lord. They want to remember what happened in the garden. You have Cain, who totally dished it. He went off, built a city. He's got a whole people group, and they are in total defiance to the Lord. This is where we're picking up with Cain's kind of group. And every man made unto himself, just to remember some of this language, and every man unto himself a god, and they robbed and plundered every man his neighbor as well as his relative, and they corrupted the earth, and the earth was filled with violence. And their judges and rulers. Now, this is where words translated, you just got to check. And the only really downfall thing that I can't do that really wish we could, I can't go into a Hebrew text, and so I got to learn to read Hebrew and check the words that are used. Like I can go to any of the canonized Bibles or books and find the original Hebrew and the Greek. Unfortunately, with Jasher and Enoch, unless I can read Hebrew and Greek, but I can trust the translation.